Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast, a conversation aimed at understanding all sides of mental health, addiction recovery, and homelessness. Each interview will include one's personal experiences and insights, or an expert's advice and knowledge within one of these fields. The goal is to promote awareness, guidance, and support for anyone who is affected by these challenges. Thank you all for listening. Welcome back to the Mental Insights Podcast. This is your host, Brendan.cutuli, and we're here today for Season 2, Episode number 26 with Anthony Vaughan. Anthony spoke about in the previous episode his own personal experiences with work challenges and how this can affect not only your mental health, but the way a business can be run. In this next part, we're going to be speaking specifically about what Anthony is doing today in order to uplift people within the workplace. Anthony, to really bring more light in terms of your business and what you're doing today, why don't you share a little bit more about, the premise, the mission of the company, and how you're able to help people today?
Yeah, I would gladly do that. I appreciate it. So guys, I'm the co-founder, right? I was going to say founder, but I've now been blessed to have four other co-founders. So I'm the co-founder of a company called the E1b2 Collective. That stands for Employees First, Business Second. So right off the top there, you guys can get the gist of kind of where my head is. The E1b2 Collective is a collective of brands. Let me start there. So right now we have Project 2030, which is a speaking series, an event. Think of it like a music artist going on a tour. So it's a series of events, speaking opportunities that are all throughout the universities and speaking directly to the HR programs there so that I can help and improve and inspire the next generation of people leaders. So we have upcoming speaking events at Johns Hopkins University, LSU. We've talked at Texas A&M, Texas Tyler, Texas State, San Diego State, and just to name a few, Maryland University. So I love that. I'm excited about that. We have the E1b2 podcast. We have Project 2030, the podcast. We have an initiative called Startup EX, which is our job is to try to operationalize and support the employee experience at the startup level. A lot of startups have no idea what they're doing from that lens, and we want to come in at a white glove level over the course of 6 to 9 months and help them get that off the ground. And then finally, we have a company called Beyond Brand Studios, which is a podcast where we interview managers of individual departments inside of companies, as well as founders. And we talk to them, a no-cush interview, and drive them really hard to explain the good, bad, and indifferent that are happening inside of the day-to-day culture, a role, responsibilities, so that an employee listening to that podcast beforehand, before they go to an interview, can really understand what the organization is like, can really get a good sense of the personality of those they'll be led by, and they can get a kind of a behind-the-scenes look at how decisions are made, how is innovation kind of thought of, and how fast are things put in place. What's the day-to-day culture look like? What are the experiences? Who am I being led by, and where are they at right now in their own personal development life or their career as a leader, and all different types of things that we ask these individuals to push them to be very transparent. To wrap it all up, my passion, my goal, my purpose of starting this business is to literally make sure to do my part, right? Because there's a lot of people in this world, to do my part to make sure that every single human being in this world is experiencing a day-to-day workplace environment that not only makes their mental stability where it needs to be, but fulfills them in their overall career endeavors and passions. I believe that's everyone's right, and I believe it's a company's responsibility to have something to do with that. And so that's why the company is here.
That's awesome, Anthony. I, want to thank you for the work that you do because it's certainly of the utmost importance. People need this support. They need these resources in order to, find the company that they truly fit into and find the company that's going to treat them the way that they should be treated. And, it's really how you show up every day. It's how you're able to support the people that you do. And, we spoke about how much of an impact a leader has on their employees and has on within their own work environment. And, before we get into how you're even supporting the people within your company and supporting your clients in uplifting themselves within the work environment, I first want to know, how do you focus on your own mental health in the workplace? Because, when you're focusing on yourself, you have then a better opportunity to uplift the other people around you and support them in a better light because you're supporting yourself first. So, could you share a little bit about how you're able to focus on yourself and what you're doing in that realm in order for you to be, in the right place as, 100% of your own capabilities to be able to, transition that into the way that you're affecting and supporting and leading other people?
That's interesting. Recently here, I've been getting back into the groove of working out more, meditation, a lot of the simple things that I'm sure you've heard time and time again. Um, but at a macro level, what I like to do is for me, mental health it starts with like clarity and honesty. I think when you lie to yourself as a person of one, I think it can cause a lot of friction in your own brain, which can cause a lot of problems in the real world. And so for me, my mental health comes around prov- doing complete audits of like my schedule each week to be completely honest around, are you doing everything in your power to get your goals off the ground? Are you doing everything in your power to be the man that you need to be for your girlfriend and for your family? Are you doing everything in your power to be the man that you need to be for yourself? I like to just do these nice little audits of what my day-to-day schedule in life really looks like, and be completely transparent and honest with myself about those realities and about those factors. That provides me a certain level of peace, because even if the answer is no at that time, what I have kind of figured out how to develop a muscle in is to immediately go into problem solving mode and start to patch up those holes rather than getting into a depressed state. But I think for me, my biggest thing is reverse engineering and auditing myself on a consistent basis so that I'm always living into truth and not BSing myself. That's what I try to do. I know that's kind of a weird backwards answer, but it's something that I think a lot of people would find value in if they were actually doing it. Because if you can live into your truth and then figure out ways to fix your truth, not get upset about your truth, you'll actually find yourself consistently every day moving towards something greater.
I love it, Anthony. I think it's spot on because these are some things in which people think that they can, just do in their head or do it kind of, simultaneously with other things. And, you're speaking about the importance of doing, what sounds at a basic level of what you can do that shouldn't take that much time, but it's so, impactful in the way that you can start your week, start your day, and how that spirals into your effectiveness, your productivity, even just your awareness throughout the day, the week, the month. It provides so much more benefit. And I'm glad you brought that up because those are practical things that people can do every day. Just ask those right questions, set aside that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes in the morning to do these activities in order to be prepared for the future. I think that's such a valuable step. And as you were working throughout, you know, seeing what needs to be changed within the workplace today. You've had your previous experiences, you've spoken with people who've had some challenges. What did you see as the biggest factor where people struggled within the workplace? What did you see as, these big challenges that were in the workplace that you were trying to solve today?
Um, for me, there's a lot of like interesting tactics and strategies and nuances that a lot of people that are much more seasoned and senior than me know how to execute on. And I'll give you guys a few. But what I want to do is I want to kind of break it down and become a little bit more simple, because that's really kind of what I'm about. For me, there's a lot of tactics around, hiring manager training and, new hire orientation and business planning and people strategy and strategic workforce planning and all these things that are great. But for me, I like to kind of break things down into a very practical sense. And so when I started this business and when I got into this industry overall, because I was a VP of people for two companies for the last 4 years. And so when I got into this space, not knowing a lot of those buzzwords that I just kind of spit at you there, I looked at the practicality of it. Like, what would it look like if I were to sit down with an employee and have a thoughtful dinner, a drink, a coffee for an hour, 2 hours, as long as it takes, and build what I like to call the emotional glue to the point where they feel safe enough to tell me their overall dreams, passions, and goals. And then what would it look like if I made it my responsibility to make that happen, even if that meant them leaving my company? And that was the type of practicality and simplicity that I brought to this space that I think was a little bit different and that I want to try to keep consistent in my life. And so to answer your question directly, what I'm trying to bring to this space and what I'm trying to bring to employees, what I think is missing is that overall level of practicality and then overall level of empathy. Do to your employees or to those that you lead just the same as you would do to your son, your daughter, your uncle, your cousin. Just as much of an experience that you want them to feel, you need to give to those that you lead or your direct employees. And I think things like, again, a simple one-on-one where you figure out where their goals are, you live into that and you make it your job to get those things off the ground. Live into researching and understanding, reward responses, threat responses, simple levels of neuroscience, so that when you notice those things are happening throughout your employees' day-to-day experiences in the workplace, you can give them time off. You can pause for a moment and have a thoughtful conversation. Figure out ways to blend and be a chameleon as a human and be able to build relationships and that emotional glue with all of your employees so that you can have them bring you new ideas, and that's a safe place that can drive innovation for the business. For me, I just try to make things completely simple and practical and do things that I think we would do anyway for a friend, but let's just do it in the business context. So that's kind of, I guess, a weird answer to your question that I'm trying to change up and trying to bring to these employees.
Awesome, Anthony. It's certainly something that, as we're stating, is of necessity. As you know, you're stating you want to treat others the way you want to be treated, and the work environment is not much different from at home. You need to still have that transparency. You still need to have that respect within your relationships. Whether it's A to B, it doesn't matter the position. It matters about showing up for the people around you. And, you know, in terms of the way that you're supporting people, you spoke about how you're doing this one-on-one, and you spoke a little bit about some of the resources that you are providing within your company. And I want you to share a little bit more about, what it is that you have out there that you're providing, whether it's the one-on-one support, whether it's the resources through your podcast, through other agencies. How are you providing this support for your clients, for someone who's listening that may be considering reaching out to you, Anthony, and saying, all right, I have this challenge within my work environment, what it is that you can do for me, what can I go to seek out more education? Why don't you share with my listeners, what it is that you're providing at a whole scale for people who have these challenges that we spoke about in the first part, but need that next step. They need the education, and then they need to take that into action.
I would point them directly to the E1b2 podcast. I have well over 200 episodes there, and I go very deep into tactics, tools, opportunities, perspectives, theories, frameworks that I know for a fact will, over time, if you were to listen to every single episode, let's call it over the course of 3 to 6 months, it would inevitably change the behavior and change the framework and the mental kind of viewpoint that you have on this space, because that's really where it comes down to, right? What makes me a little bit different, because I've been trying to actually explain this to some prospective clients and other people. We're not your typical HR consultancy kind of firm or anything of that nature. When we say E1b2, we really mean it. When we say employees first, business second, every single traditional thing, whether it's policies and procedures, whether it's conflict resolution, whether it's coaching and feedback, whether it's learning and development, whether it's succession planning, everything is around what would be the most ideal experience my daughter would go through that I want? What would be the most ideal experience I would want my mother to go through? What would be the most ideal experience I would want to go through? Like, employees first. Live into what you feel your employees would inevitably want to experience at a very human level, and do whatever you got to do to get there. And my podcast really breaks that down. And the hope is, over the course of the 200 plus episodes, I can really change someone's overall viewpoint on it, because the issue is a lot of people in business, and definitely HR, they seem to have this very robotic, traditional 1947 approach to it. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of great things out there trying to put employees first, but it's falling on deaf ears, because the hard work of actually changing the internal workings and frameworks and perspectives around this work has not happened. No one actually truly believes employees should be first. They're writing blogs and putting out headlines. They're not actually changing policies and practices and behaviors to be conducive to that. So the first step is listening to my podcast and many others to kind of get yourself up to par with the overall mental framework of it.
Wonderful, Anthony. I love that you brought this up, because I think this will be a good, transition into speaking about, what's to come, what to look for anybody that's listening. You've given your own personal experiences, you've given what you're able to do one-on-one with clients, and as well, what resources you have for free on your podcast for people to educate themselves and take into action. But as you said, companies have to do that internally. Companies have to take this larger step in order to provide, this wider change that you want to implement within companies. And in terms of, this is your first year as you're working with, E1b2, why don't you speak a little bit about, what is still to improve within the workplace? What's to come for you in, helping people move throughout, providing a more mentally healthy and even healthy in general workplace? What can everybody look forward to in the future, and what else do you want to improve and make change within the workplace?
What they can expect in the future is a team, a company, a collective that's really going to try to build companies and build frameworks to really change this work. My goal over the next 10 years is to really make a big dent and have people really question the perspective of, should employees be first or should business be first, and to kind of flip it around there and make sure that employees are first, and to make a big dent around that. And a couple of things that I think, for me, what I want to kind of touch on and make sure that is actually changing, and that I think is super practical, and a lot of people can kind of make these changes quickly, would definitely be around kind of like succession planning and career mapping. For me, I think those are the two areas that are most connected. Succession planning, career mapping are kind of the same / decision making. Those are the things that I've seen in my career that are most connected to the potential of mental health issues. If you're not living into the reality, which is employees like to understand how decisions are made, because it allows them to feel like they're a part of the game and not just being a robot. And if you don't understand how that can negatively affect your overall mental health, then I advise you do some research, listen to my podcast, read some other blogs, figure that out, because no one likes to be just told what to do and to execute that as a robot. Individuals like to have autonomy and understanding of the value that they're providing from a task perspective, because maybe they have a different viewpoint. Maybe they have something they can add to it, and you need to live into that autonomy. Career mapping and succession planning are very much similar. A lot of companies to this day are not thinking through at the operational level, what are the opportunities that we can create out of thin air for our people to grow? So a very simple, practical example I'll give you. In my last business, I created a company. I created an initiative called the graduation model. And it was very simple. When we went into the operations, we realized there were no margins to reinvest inside of the company to provide more opportunities for like roles. Like there was no need for any more managers. There were no need for any more other positions for at least the next 18 months. And then when we looked into the margins, there was no flexibility to pay any of these coaches over $14 an hour. So we immediately went into employees first. Is $14 an hour enough for these human beings to live in a nice home, to pay bills, to go on one vacation, to feed their families good organic foods? The answer is clearly no. So what do we need to do? We realized, again, there was no innovation that we could do to try to increase the revenue to pay them more. So what we did is we created a graduation model. I sat down with every single employee and I figured out where all of them wanted to go long-term in their careers. And I started reaching out to organizations and building partnerships and creating mentorship and internship opportunities. And I said, you give me 18 months of this company, I'll give you a new life. I'll graduate you from this company, move you on to the next company, and you go on along the way. That's a good idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, the PR and the attention we got at the business level for doing something like that blew up. So that was a good idea. That meant a lot of new employees were starting to get excited about coming to this company. The second thing is over the course of those 18 months, the engagement, the retention, the excitement went through the roof because they knew we had their back in life, not just the day-to-day deliverables from 9 to 5. And so I'll pause there and kind of wrap it up though. But that's a practical example, a tangible example of what I mean and what it looks like to really put employees first at the operational level, not a foosball table, not a nice kind of Christmas card, not any of these other little engagement things that you hear. That's an operational shift that we did that paid dividends long term.
Thank you for sharing that, Anthony, because, I do want you to take this, a little step further to close out this episode. And, within this question, I want to, provide more of a hypothetical situation, which is, we're down the line in the future, say, whether it's a year or two, E1b2 is the leading HR agency. Every company is coming to you in order to facilitate growth within their workplace, within their environment, in order to provide, an employees first mindset. Can you speak about what would be, one or two tangible things that you think are the most important to fundamentally change a company to provide, this welcoming workplace, to provide this, mentally, emotionally, physically healthy environment for people wanting to go and seek out a company today?
I can give you a couple. So what I just said was one of the things that I would do. Another thing that I would give a tip for is, first impression report. So let's start at the very beginning. Redesigning your onboarding strategy and your onboarding process to live into reality is something that I think is really important. Thus, why I created Beyond Brand Studios. The Beyond Brand Studio concept with the podcast is really simple. I want leaders to tell employees the effed up, because I'm not going to curse in your podcast, the effed up bad things that are happening inside the company, the good things that are happening inside the company, the gray and the indifferent and the odd, the weird, the stressful. I want people to explain the reality of what you're going to be getting into as an employee here and stop painting this facade that everything is going to be all peachy and cream and perfect. And then 6 weeks after they start their job, they're calling mom, they're calling girlfriends, they're calling friends and saying, I hate this job, I hate this experience. I want companies to be a little bit more thoughtful throughout the onboarding experience to expose them to the reality from the get-go. It saves you money, it saves you time, it provides that employee the reality, thus they can kind of rationalize in their head whether they want to be here or not, so they can lock in and be a little bit more engaged. So that's another thing. Connected to that, I think first impression reports would be incredibly important. These are actual reports, surveys that you would send to your employees and give them the autonomy to explain all the negative things they felt throughout the onboarding experience that they would that they would like to not ever experience again. And what I mean by that is writing out in a paragraph format all the experiences they felt. Maybe it was during some of the shadowing opportunities. Maybe they didn't feel like there was any sufficient resources provided in the beginning, from an educational perspective. Maybe the times were not as flexible as needed because they were still migrating from a previous job and trying to kind of blend the two. Like, kind of diving into whatever they felt was not productive. A first impression report will provide you that. And then what you need to do as a team, as a company, is dissect that first impression report and actually make change. Because that's the last thing that I'll say here is when you try to live into this employees first, business second mindset, and you want to reach out to your employees, you want to talk to your employees, you want to get thoughts and perspectives, you actually have to look into the data, what they say, and make operational changes and shifts, not just read the data and say, oh, thanks for the feedback, and continue to move on. Don't be lazy. Take the time to go into change management behaviors and make changes that are going to be more beneficial for your employees. Because guess what? If you do that, it's actually going to be more beneficial for your company. So yeah, that's that we got pretty tangible there.
I'm so glad you did, Anthony, because it's something that I think people need to hear, whether it's an employee that's listening or whether it's an employer that is listening. They can, hear these experiences and these tangible, activities that could be put in place, these policies that could be put in place into their own workplace. And I think, anybody who is listening, just having this sense of, more education about it, and then transitioning, going towards your podcast and educating themselves more so they can, try to implement this or even try to reach out to you for more advice about how to actually put this into place, to be practical and to try to make shifts within their own workplace, I think is so essential. And, it's what you're doing today. So, I'm so glad that you took this time to be on the Mental Insights podcast. And I just want to thank you for sharing your own personal experiences and your own insights. And, the work that you're doing today, I think is so incredible.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. Your questions were great. You really pushed me to get really, really tangible today. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely, Anthony. I want to thank you again. I want to thank everybody for listening. This was season 2, episode number 26 with Anthony Vaughan. And please, everybody, be sure to go click the link below in the show notes, get connected with Anthony, let him know what you thought of this episode. Be sure to reach out if you want any more advice. If you have a problem, if you have a challenge within your workplace today, be sure to reach out. Anthony will give you tangible advice to make change within your own life, within your own workplace, to take that next step. So, thank you all again for listening. And this was your host, Brendan Cutuli. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Mental Insights podcast. Make sure to reach out to today's guest or myself if you need any advice, guidance, or support in your life today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and review to this podcast so we know what you thought of this episode. I look forward to being in touch with you all in the next episode. I hope you all have a wonderful day.